The prison station floated in the darkness of space, far from any sun or planet. It was a massive structure made of cold metal and thick glass, built by many alien races working together. Inside its walls, the worst criminals from hundreds of worlds waited in small cells. Some were locked up for murder. Others had stolen important things or broken sacred laws. But not all prisoners deserved to be there. Deep in the lowest level of the station, where the lights were dim and the air smelled like rust, a creature lay in chains. It was a white dragon, one of the rarest beings in the known galaxy. Its scales, which should have gleamed like fresh snow under moonlight, were now dull and covered in dried blood. The dragon's body was twisted in an unnatural way. Its back curved upward in a painful hump, the result of a broken spine that had healed wrong. The dragon's name was Luminex. It had once been a keeper of ancient knowledge, a scholar who spent centuries preserving the histories of dying civilizations. White dragons were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful beings who never harmed anyone. They lived in great libraries carved into asteroids, reading and recording everything they learned. But now Luminex lay shackled on the cold floor of a prison cell, breathing in short, painful gasps. 2 guards stood outside the cell, watching the dragon suffer. One was a Scathron, a reptilian creature with green scales and yellow eyes that never blinked. The other was a Vrel, an insect-like being with 4 arms and a clicking voice. They spoke to each other in low tones, sometimes laughing at the dragon's pain. "How much longer do you think it will last?" The Vrel guard clicked, its mandibles moving rapidly. The Scathron guard shrugged, a gesture it had learned from watching humans. "Maybe another day. Maybe 2. Who cares? The High Command wants it to die slowly. We're just following orders." Luminex heard every word. Its large eyes, which glowed faintly even in the darkness, followed the guard's movements. The dragon wanted to speak, to tell them that a terrible mistake had been made. But the chains around its throat were too tight and speaking caused too much pain. Far above, in the medical wing of the station, a human doctor named Hyun-Soo was finishing his shift. He was a small man with tired eyes and hands that always smelled like antiseptic soap. Hyun-Soo had been working on the prison station for 3 years, treating sick prisoners and injured guards. He didn't like his job very much, but someone had to do it. As he was putting away his medical supplies, a message appeared on his computer screen. It was anonymous, with no sender's name or identification code. The message was short and simple. "Cell Block 7, Level 9, White Dragon dying. They won't let anyone help." Hyun-Soo stared at the message for a long time. White dragons were supposed to be protected by galactic law. Hurting one was a serious crime, punishable by decades in prison. Why would a white dragon be locked up here? And why wouldn't the guards allow medical treatment? He printed the message and put it in his pocket. Then he grabbed his medical bag and headed toward the elevator. Something was very wrong and he needed to see it for himself. The journey to Level 9 took 15 minutes. The elevator moved slowly, creaking and groaning as it descended through the station's many floors. When the doors finally opened, Hyun-Soo stepped into a corridor that was darker and colder than the rest of the station. The lights here flickered constantly, and there were strange stains on the walls that he didn't want to examine too closely. He walked quickly, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. When he reached Cell Block 7, he found the 2 guards standing in front of a heavy door. They looked surprised to see him. "What are you doing here, human?" the Scathron guard demanded, stepping forward to block his path. Hyun-Soo held up his medical badge, which gave him the right to treat any sick or injured being on the station. "I received a report about a prisoner in critical condition. I'm here to provide medical care." The Vrel guard clicked nervously, its antennae twitching. "This prisoner is under special quarantine. No one is allowed inside without authorization from High Command." "Quarantine for what disease?" Hyun-Soo asked, already knowing they were lying. The guards looked at each other. The Scathron spoke again, its voice harder now. "That information is classified. Leave now, or we will report you for violating security protocols." Hyun-Soo tried to look past them through the small window in the door. What he saw made his blood run cold. A massive white creature lay on the floor, its body covered in wounds and twisted at an impossible angle. He could see the rise and fall of its chest, but each breath looked painful and difficult. "That's a white dragon," Hyun-Soo said quietly. "They're a protected species. Why is it in chains?" "The creature is a criminal," the Scathron said. "It stole classified research and tried to sell it to enemy governments. It's lucky we didn't execute it immediately." Hyun-soo didn't believe a word of it. White dragons didn't steal anything. They were scholars and historians, beings who valued knowledge above all else. They would never commit such crimes. I demand to see the medical records, Hyun-soo said, his voice shaking slightly. By galactic law, all prisoners have the right to medical treatment regardless of their crimes. The Vrel guard moved closer, its four arms crossing in front of its body. The records are sealed. You have no authority here, human. Leave before we make you leave. For a moment, Hyun-soo considered arguing further, but he knew these guards would never let him pass. He would need to find another way to help the dragon. As he turned to leave, he looked through the window one more time. The dragon's eyes met his, and in that brief moment, Hyun-soo saw something that broke his heart. The dragon wasn't looking at him with anger or hatred. It was looking at him with hope. It somehow knew that this human was different from the others, that he might actually care. Hyun-soo walked back to the elevator, his mind racing. When he reached his quarters, he immediately sent a message to his old colleague on Earth, a woman named Ji-woo. She was a xenobiologist who specialized in reptilian species, and she had studied white dragons for years. If anyone could help him understand what was happening here, it was her. He wrote, Ji-woo, I need your help urgently. There's a white dragon imprisoned here, badly injured with a broken spine. The guards won't let me treat it. They claim it's a criminal, but something feels very wrong. Can you come to the station? I think this dragon is innocent, and if we don't do something soon, it will die. He sent the message and waited. Outside his window, the stars burned in the endless darkness of space. Somewhere out there, justice existed. Somewhere out there, beings fought for what was right. Hyun-soo just hoped they could reach this dragon before it was too late. Ji-woo received the message while she was teaching a class at the University of Earth. She was explaining the biology of dragon species to a room full of students when her personal device buzzed. When she saw Hyun-soo's name, she excused herself and stepped into the hallway to read it. Her face went pale as she read his words. A white dragon imprisoned and injured. Guards refusing medical treatment. She had studied these creatures for 15 years and knew them to be gentle, intelligent beings who had never harmed anyone in recorded history. The idea that one would commit a crime was almost impossible to believe. She canceled her remaining classes and booked passage on the next transport ship to the prison station. It would take 3 days to reach it, traveling through multiple jump gates across the galaxy. Every hour of that journey, she researched everything she could find about white dragon law and galactic prison regulations. When Ji-woo finally arrived at the station, Hyun-soo was waiting for her at the docking bay. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. They embraced briefly, then hurried to a private meeting room where they could talk without being overheard. Thank you for coming so quickly, Hyun-soo said, pouring her a cup of synthetic coffee. I've been trying to access the dragon's files for 3 days, but every request gets denied. They keep saying it's classified information. Ji-woo opened her computer and connected it to the station's network. Her credentials as a galactic xenobiologist gave her higher security clearance than most doctors. She began searching through the database, looking for any mention of the dragon named Luminex. Here, she said after several minutes. I found a file, but most of it is blocked. All I can see is the charge: theft of classified genetic research. The arrest date was 6 months ago. The arresting authority was the Scathran Empire. Hyun-soo leaned closer to look at the screen. 6 months? The dragon has been in that cell for half a year without proper medical care? It gets worse, Ji-woo said, scrolling through more documents. According to this, Luminex was supposed to testify before the Galactic Council about something, but the hearing was canceled 3 days before it was scheduled. No reason given. They sat in silence for a moment, both understanding what this meant. Someone powerful wanted to keep Luminex quiet. The charges were probably false, designed to imprison the dragon and prevent it from speaking. We need to find out what Luminex knew, Ji-woo said. What was it trying to tell the council? Over the next several hours, they dug deeper into the station's records. Ji-woo used her academic connections to access scientific databases, looking for any research that might involve white dragons. Hyun-soo, meanwhile, quietly talked to other staff members, trying to learn anything he could about the dragon's arrival. A cleaning worker named Tae-il told him something interesting. I was working on level 9 the night they brought the dragon in, Tae-il whispered, looking around nervously. It wasn't just the guards. There were Scathran military officers there too, ones wearing the uniforms of the Imperial Science Division. They were very angry about something. I heard them arguing about destroying the evidence before they noticed me and chased me away. That evening, Jiwoo made a breakthrough. She found a research paper published by a Scathron laboratory about genetic modification of reptilian species. The paper claimed to be studying ways to cure diseases, but Jiwoo recognized the techniques described. They weren't for curing anything. They were for creating weapons. Look at this, she told Hyun-soo, showing him the document. They're talking about forced breeding programs, combining DNA from different species to create stronger, more aggressive creatures. This is completely illegal under galactic law. What does this have to do with Luminex? Hyun-soo asked. White dragons are archivists. They preserve knowledge and document everything they encounter. If Luminex discovered evidence of these experiments, it would have tried to report it to the proper authorities. The Scathrons couldn't allow that. Hyun-soo felt sick, so they arrested the dragon before it could testify. They made up false charges and locked it away where no one would listen to its story. Exactly, Jiwoo said. And they're letting it die slowly, making it look like natural causes or medical complications. By the time anyone investigates, there won't be any witnesses left. They now understood the situation, but knowing the truth didn't help them solve the problem. The guards still refused to let Hyun-soo treat Luminex, and they had no authority to override the security restrictions. The next morning, they decided to confront the station commander directly. His name was Krell, a Scathron with scarred scales and a reputation for following orders without question. His office was on the command level, surrounded by armed guards. Krell looked annoyed when they entered. What do you want? He asked, not bothering to offer them seats. We want permission to provide medical treatment to the prisoner in cell block 7. Level 9, Hyun-soo said, trying to keep his voice steady. Request denied, Krell said immediately. That prisoner is classified as non-essential. Medical resources must be reserved for guards and important inmates. Non-essential? Jiwoo's voice rose with anger. That's a white dragon, a protected species under galactic law. You can't just let it die. Krell's eyes narrowed. I can do whatever the High Command orders me to do. The dragon is a criminal and a traitor. It will receive no special treatment. Show us the evidence, Hyun-soo demanded. Show us proof that Luminex committed a crime. The evidence is classified, Krell said, standing up to signal the meeting was over. You have no right to question military decisions. Now leave my office before I have you both removed from the station. They left, frustrated and angry. Outside in the corridor, Jiwoo punched the wall hard enough to hurt her hand. They're going to kill that dragon, she said, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. But Hyun-soo wasn't ready to give up yet. Maybe there is something we can do. We just need to find the right people to help us. That evening, a young man approached them in the station's cafeteria. His name was Dae-hyun, and he worked as an engineer in the communications department. He sat down at their table without being invited, looking nervous. I heard you asking questions about the white dragon, he said quietly. I think I can help you. Hyun-soo and Jiwoo exchanged glances. Who are you? Hyun-soo asked. Someone who's tired of watching innocent beings suffer, Dae-hyun said. I've been monitoring the station's secure communications for weeks. I know about the Scathron experiments. I know what Luminex tried to expose, and I know they're planning to execute the dragon tomorrow morning. Jiwoo grabbed his arm. Tomorrow? Are you sure? I intercepted a message from Krell to the High Command, Dae-hyun said. They're going to inject Luminex with a poison that mimics natural death. They'll blame it on complications from the spinal injury. By the time anyone investigates, all the evidence will be gone. Hyun-soo felt his heart pounding. Tomorrow. They had less than 12 hours to save Luminex. Can you help us get into the cell? He asked Dae-hyun. The young engineer nodded slowly. I can disable the security systems for about 20 minutes. Maybe 30 if we're lucky, but after that every alarm in the station will go off. You'll need an escape plan. We'll figure something out, Jiwoo said. Right now, we just need to keep that dragon alive. They spent the rest of the night planning. It was dangerous and probably impossible, but they had no other choice. 3 humans against an entire military prison station, trying to save a creature they barely knew. But sometimes doing the right thing meant taking impossible risks. And if they failed, at least they would fail knowing they had tried. The plan was simple, which was good because complicated plans usually failed. Dae-hyun would create a false maintenance alert in the station's northern section, drawing most of the guards away from level 9. While the guards were distracted, Hyunsu and Jiwoo would enter Luminex's cell, stabilize the dragon's injuries enough for transport, and get out before anyone noticed. Of course, simple plans could still go terribly wrong. They met at midnight in an empty storage room near the medical bay. Hyunsu had packed his emergency medical kit with everything he might need: pain suppressors, bone grafting compounds, tissue regenerators, and several syringes of powerful stimulants to keep the dragon conscious. Jiwoo carried a portable scanner that could monitor vital signs and detect internal injuries. Daehyun arrived last, carrying a small computer device that he would use to hack into the security system. He looked even more nervous than before, his hands shaking slightly as he activated the device. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, looking at both of them. "If we get caught, they'll lock us up too. Or worse." "I'm sure," Hyunsu said firmly. "That dragon doesn't deserve to die for trying to expose the truth." Jiwoo nodded in agreement. "We've already come this far. There's no turning back now." Daehyun took a deep breath and pressed several buttons on his device. "Okay, I'm triggering the maintenance alert now. You'll have about 20 minutes before the system realizes it's fake. Maybe 25 if the guards are slow to respond." Alarms began blaring in the northern section of the station. Through the walls they could hear the sound of boots running, guards rushing to investigate the supposed emergency. Daehyun checked his device again. "The guards on level 9 are leaving their posts," he said. "You need to go now." Hyunsu and Jiwoo ran toward the elevator, trying not to look suspicious as they moved through the corridors. A few off-duty workers passed them but didn't pay any attention. Everyone was focused on the alarms echoing through the station. The elevator ride to level 9 felt like it took forever. When the doors finally opened, they found the corridor empty. The guards had abandoned their posts to help with the emergency, just as Daehyun had predicted. They approached the heavy door to Luminex's cell. Daehyun had already unlocked it remotely, and it slid open with a soft hiss. The smell that hit them was terrible: blood, infection, and unwashed scales. The lights inside were dim, barely providing enough illumination to see. Luminex lay in the center of the cell, exactly where Hyunsu had seen the dragon days before. The chains around its neck, legs, and wings looked heavy enough to hold a small spaceship. The dragon's eyes were closed, and for a horrible moment Hyunsu thought they were too late. Then one large eye opened, glowing faintly in the darkness. The dragon saw them and made a low rumbling sound, too weak to speak properly. "We're here to help you," Jiwoo said softly, kneeling beside the massive creature. "We know what they did to you. We know you're innocent." Luminex's eye filled with something that looked like tears. The dragon tried to move its head, but the chains held it firmly in place. Hyunsu immediately began examining the injuries. The dragon's spine was badly damaged, twisted at an unnatural angle that created the painful hunchback. Several ribs were broken, and there were deep wounds across the scales where the chains had cut into flesh. Worse, infection had set in. Without immediate treatment, the dragon would die within hours. "I'm going to give you something for the pain," Hyunsu said, preparing a large syringe. White dragons were massive creatures, and the dosage needed to be carefully calculated. Too little and it wouldn't work. Too much and it could stop the dragon's heart. He injected the pain suppressor into a major blood vessel near the dragon's shoulder. Almost immediately, Luminex's breathing became easier. The tension in the dragon's body relaxed slightly. While Hyunsu worked on stabilizing the spine, Jiwoo scanned the dragon's internal organs. What she saw made her angry. The damage wasn't just from the broken spine. Someone had beaten this creature severely, probably during the arrest or transportation. There were internal bruises, damaged organs, and signs of deliberate torture. "They hurt you on purpose," Jiwoo said, her voice shaking with rage. "This wasn't just an accident during capture. They wanted you to suffer." Luminex made another low sound, confirming what she said. Hyunsu began applying the bone grafting compound to the dragon's spine. It was crude field medicine, not the proper surgery that Luminex needed, but it would hold the bones in place long enough for transport. The compound hardened quickly, forming a temporary brace around the damaged vertebrae. "This isn't a permanent fix," he told the dragon, "but it will let you move without causing more damage. When we get you somewhere safe, proper doctors can perform surgery to repair everything." Luminex's eyes followed his movements, full of trust and hope. Suddenly, Daehyun's voice crackled through their communication devices. "We have a problem. The guards figured out the alert was fake. They're heading back to level 9 right now. You have maybe 3 minutes. We're not done yet, Hyun-soo said desperately, still working on the spine stabilization. You need to leave now, Dae-hyun insisted. They'll catch you. Ji-woo looked at Hyun-soo, then at the dragon. They had come too far to give up now. We finished this, she said firmly. Hyun-soo nodded and worked faster, his hands moving with practiced precision despite the pressure. He applied the last of the grafting compound and activated the tissue regenerator, pointing it at the worst of the infected wounds. Done, he said finally. Now we need to get these chains off. But the chains were electronically locked, designed to respond only to the guards' control devices. They couldn't break them, and Dae-hyun couldn't unlock them remotely without triggering an immediate alarm. Can you break them? Ji-woo asked Luminex. The dragon looked at the chains, then nodded slowly. With the pain suppressors working and the spine temporarily stabilized, Luminex could move again. The dragon took a deep breath and pulled against the restraints with all its remaining strength. The metal groaned and bent. Luminex pulled harder, muscles straining under white scales. One chain snapped with a sound like a gunshot. Then another. The dragon was weak and injured, but even in this condition it was incredibly strong. Just as the last chain broke free, they heard voices in the corridor outside. The guards had returned. At that exact moment, a woman's voice came through their communication devices. This is Sun-hee. I'm a cargo pilot docked at Base 7. Dae-hyun told me you might need help. My ship is ready to go if you can get there. Hyun-soo had never heard of Sun-hee before, but right now she sounded like an angel. We're on our way, he said. The cell door opened and 2 guards stepped inside. Their eyes widened when they saw Luminex free of its chains, standing on shaky legs between 2 humans who definitely shouldn't be there. What are you doing? The Scathrin guard shouted, reaching for his weapon. But they didn't have time for explanations. Luminex roared, a sound so loud it shook the walls and made both guards stumble backward. Despite its injuries, the dragon was still a formidable creature when angry. Run! Ji-woo screamed. They ran into the corridor with Luminex following behind them, moving awkwardly because of its damaged spine. The dragon's claws scraped against the metal floor, and its twisted back made it slower than it should be, but it kept moving. More guards appeared ahead of them, blocking the path to the elevator. Energy weapons began charging, their distinctive whine filling the air. This way, Dae-hyun's voice came through their devices. Take the maintenance tunnels to your left. I'm guiding you to a different route. They turned left, finding a narrow corridor that led to the station's maintenance system. It was cramped and dark, barely wide enough for Luminex to squeeze through, but it was better than facing armed guards. Behind them, they heard the guards giving chase. Energy bolts flashed past, scorching the walls and ceiling. One shot came so close to Hyun-soo that he felt the heat on his face. They ran through the tunnels, following Dae-hyun's directions as he monitored their progress from the communications center. Left turn, right turn, down a ladder, through a crawlspace. Luminex struggled to keep up, gasping with pain at every movement, but the dragon refused to stop. Finally, they reached a junction point. Dae-hyun told them to seal the bulkhead door behind them, which would buy them a few more seconds. Ji-woo slammed her hand on the control panel, and the heavy door began sliding shut. The Scathrin guards reached the door just as it closed, their angry faces visible through the small window. They began working on the override controls immediately. Base 7 is just ahead, Dae-hyun said. Sun-hee's ship is waiting, but you need to hurry. Station defense systems are activating. They could see the docking bay now, and sitting on the landing pad was an old cargo ship that had seen better days. Its hull was patched with mismatched metal plates, and one of its engines looked like it might fall off at any moment. But the loading ramp was down, and a young woman stood at the top, waving frantically for them to hurry. That was Sun-hee, and right now, her beaten-up old ship looked like the most beautiful thing in the universe. Sun-hee was a short woman with quick hands and a sharp mind. She had been hauling cargo across the galaxy for 7 years, and in that time she had learned when to ask questions and when to simply help people who needed it. When Dae-hyun had contacted her an hour ago explaining the situation, she hadn't hesitated. Get that dragon on board, she shouted as they ran across the docking bay. We don't have much time. Behind them, the bulkhead door exploded open. The guards had used plasma charges to blow through it, and now they were pouring into the bay, weapons raised and ready to fire. Luminex was struggling badly now. The pain suppressors were wearing off, and every step sent waves of agony through the dragon's twisted spine. Hyun-soo stayed close to the creature's side, supporting it as much as one human possibly could. "Almost there," he said encouragingly. "Just a little further." Energy bolts began hitting the ground around them, scorching the metal floor and sending up sparks. Sun-hee pulled out her own weapon, a simple plasma pistol that most cargo pilots carried for protection, and fired back at the guards. She wasn't trying to hit anyone, just slow them down. Ji-woo reached the ship first and ran up the loading ramp. She turned to help guide Luminex into the cargo hold. The dragon barely fit, having to squeeze through the doorway and curl its body into an uncomfortable position. But they managed it, pulling and pushing until Luminex was finally inside. Hyun-soo jumped in next, followed by Sun-hee, who was still firing at the approaching guards. "Close the ramp!" she shouted, running toward the cockpit. The loading ramp began lifting just as several guards reached it. One of them managed to grab the edge, trying to pull himself up, but Ji-woo kicked his hands away and he fell back to the bay floor. Sun-hee threw herself into the pilot's seat and started the engines. The old ship groaned and shuddered, its systems protesting after sitting idle for days. "Come on, you piece of junk," she muttered, flipping switches and pressing buttons. "Don't fail me now." The engines caught, roaring to life with a sound that was both beautiful and terrifying. The ship lifted off the landing pad just as more guards arrived, firing everything they had at the departing vessel. In the cargo hold, Hyun-soo and Ji-woo held onto whatever they could as the ship lurched and swayed. Luminex let out a pained roar as the movement aggravated its injuries. Hyun-soo crawled over to the dragon and quickly prepared another dose of pain suppressors. "I know it hurts," he said gently, injecting the medicine. "Just hold on a little longer." The ship cleared the docking bay and entered open space, but their problems were far from over. Sun-hee's voice came through the internal speakers, tense and urgent. "We've got company. Station defense turrets are locking onto us and they're launching pursuit ships." Through the small windows in the cargo hold, they could see the massive prison station behind them, its surface covered with weapon systems that were now all turning in their direction. Bright flashes of light appeared as the turrets began firing. Sun-hee threw the ship into a wild series of maneuvers, dodging and weaving through the incoming fire. The old cargo vessel wasn't built for combat flying, and every sharp turn made it groan like it might fall apart. A plasma bolt hit their starboard side, and the entire ship shook violently. Alarms began blaring throughout the vessel, warning of hull damage and system failures. "We can't take many more hits like that," Sun-hee called out. "I'm going to try to reach the jump gate, but it's going to be close." In the communications center back on the station, Dae-hyun was working frantically at his console. He had stayed behind, knowing that someone needed to help coordinate the escape. Now he was trying to buy them more time by interfering with the station's targeting systems. His fingers flew over the keyboard, entering commands and overriding protocols. Every few seconds he would disable a turret or cause a pursuit ship to lose its tracking lock. It wasn't much, but it might be enough to give Sun-hee the edge she needed. A senior officer burst into the communications center, demanding to know what Dae-hyun was doing. Without hesitation, the young engineer pulled out a device he had prepared earlier and pressed a button. The entire communications system shut down, plunging the station into electronic darkness. "That's for Luminex," Dae-hyun said calmly, then ran from the room before security could grab him. In space, Sun-hee was pushing her ship to its absolute limits. The engines were running at 110% capacity, which was dangerous and could cause them to explode at any moment. But they needed the extra speed. More pursuit ships were catching up. Sleek military vessels that were much faster than her cargo hauler. They fired missiles that streaked through the darkness, leaving trails of light behind them. "Hold on," Sun-hee screamed, throwing the ship into a spinning barrel roll that made everyone's stomach drop. The missiles shot past them, missing by mere meters. But there were more coming, and Sun-hee was running out of tricks. In the cargo hold, Ji-woo was strapped into a seat, her knuckles white as she gripped the armrests. Hyun-soo was kneeling beside Luminex, one hand on the dragon's massive head, whispering words of comfort that the creature probably couldn't even hear over the alarms and engine noise. Another impact rocked the ship, this time hitting the port wing. Metal tore and sparks flew. The ship began spinning out of control, and for a moment it seemed like they were going to crash. But Sun-hee was an excellent pilot, one of the best in the sector, even if most people didn't know it. She fought with the controls, using every trick she had learned in 7 years of flying through dangerous space. Slowly, painfully, she brought the ship back under control. "Jump gate in 30 seconds. she announced. "If we can just last a little longer." The pursuit ships were right behind them now, so close that they could see the pilots' faces through the cockpit windows. More missiles launched, these ones equipped with tracking systems that would follow them no matter how much Sun He maneuvered. 20 seconds to the jump gate. The missiles were closing in, their engines burning bright in the darkness. 15 seconds. Sun He cut power to the main engines and fired the reverse thrusters, a crazy move that made the ship suddenly decelerate. The pursuing vessels shot past them, unable to slow down quickly enough. 10 seconds. She redirected all available power to the forward engines and accelerated again, now flying through the gap between the confused pursuit ships. 5 seconds. The missiles were still tracking them, getting closer every moment. One of them was going to hit. There was no way to avoid it. The jump gate appeared ahead of them, a massive ring of technology that could open passages through space itself. Sun He aimed straight for the center and activated the jump sequence. The missile was less than 10 meters away when the jump gate opened. Reality itself seemed to tear open, revealing a tunnel of swirling colors and impossible geometry. Sun He's ship shot through the opening just as the missile reached them, but missiles couldn't follow through a jump gate. They needed ships around them to maintain stability. The missile hit the edge of the portal and exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Then they were through, traveling faster than light through the strange dimension between normal space. The pursuit ships were gone, left behind in a different part of the galaxy. They were safe. In the cargo hold, everyone remained silent for a long moment, not quite believing they had survived. Then Jiwoo started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that came from pure relief. Hyun-soo looked down at Luminex, who was staring at him with those large, intelligent eyes. "We did it," he said softly. "You're free now." The dragon made a sound that might have been gratitude or might have been exhaustion. Either way, it was alive, and that was what mattered. Sun He emerged from the cockpit looking tired but satisfied. "Well, that was exciting," she said with a weak smile. "So, anyone want to tell me where we're going?" "Because we're definitely never going back to that station." Hyun-soo stood up, his legs shaky from the adrenaline. "We need to get to the Galactic Council headquarters. Luminex has testimony to give, evidence that needs to be heard. The council is 3 weeks away," Sun He said, "and this ship needs serious repairs. We're lucky the engines didn't explode during that escape. Can we make it?" Jiwoo asked. Sun He looked at her battered ship, then at the injured dragon lying in her cargo hold, then at the 2 humans who had risked everything to save an innocent being. She thought about Dae-hyun, who had sacrificed his career and freedom to help them escape. "Yeah," she said finally, "we'll make it. But it's going to be a rough 3 weeks. Everyone should get comfortable because we're not stopping until we reach the council." Hyun-soo nodded and returned his attention to Luminex. The dragon's injuries were severe, and keeping it alive for 3 weeks would require constant medical care. But he was determined to do it. They had come too far to let Luminex die now. As the ship traveled through the strange dimensions of faster-than-light space, the 5 of them, 4 humans and 1 dragon, began the long journey toward justice. The journey to the Galactic Council headquarters took exactly 22 days. They were the longest and most difficult days of Hyun-soo's life. Luminex's condition was worse than he had initially realized. The dragon's spine injury had caused nerve damage that affected its entire body. Some days Luminex couldn't move at all. Other days the pain was so severe that even the strongest suppressors barely helped. Hyun-soo spent every waking hour monitoring the dragon's vital signs, adjusting medications, and doing everything he could to keep the creature alive. Jiwoo helped by researching white dragon biology, trying to find better treatment methods. Sun He kept the ship running despite multiple system failures and a nearly empty fuel reserve. They survived on emergency rations and recycled water, conserving every resource for the journey ahead. During the long hours of travel, they learned more about what had happened to Luminex. The dragon couldn't speak much because of its injuries, but it could communicate through a translation device that Jiwoo had found in the ship's storage. Through this device, Luminex told them its story. Luminex had been working in a great library on the edge of Scathron space, cataloging historical records and scientific papers. One day, a young Scathron scientist had arrived at the library, badly injured and carrying a data crystal. The scientist was dying from poison, but before she passed away, She gave Luminex the crystal and begged the dragon to protect it. The crystal contained evidence of illegal experiments conducted by the Scathran military. They were kidnapping beings from various species and using them in forced breeding programs, trying to create hybrid war creatures. Hundreds of innocents had died in these experiments, their bodies disposed of in secret. The scientist had discovered what was happening and copied the evidence, intending to report it to the Galactic Council. But the military found out about her plan and poisoned her. She managed to escape and reach Luminex's library, hoping the dragon would finish what she had started. Luminex tried to do exactly that. The dragon traveled to the council headquarters and requested an emergency hearing. But before the hearing could take place, Scathran agents arrived and arrested Luminex on false charges. They took the data crystal and destroyed it, then imprisoned the dragon in the most remote station they could find. They wanted me to disappear, Luminex explained through the translation device, its words appearing on a small screen. They wanted everyone to forget I had ever tried to speak out. But we won't let them win, Hyunsu promised. Your testimony will be heard and those responsible will face justice. During the journey, news of their escape spread across the galaxy. Someone on the prison station had leaked information about what happened, and media outlets were covering the story with great interest. A white dragon freed by human doctors, a daring escape from a military prison, evidence of illegal experiments and cover-ups. Public opinion began turning against the Scathran Empire. Other species came forward with their own stories of mysterious disappearances and secret military programs. The pressure on the Galactic Council to investigate grew stronger every day. But not everyone was happy about the attention. The Scathran government issued arrest warrants for Hyunsu, Jiwoo, Sunhee, and Daehyun, accusing them of terrorism and theft of military prisoners. They demanded that Luminex be returned immediately to face proper justice. Sunhee laughed when she heard about the warrants. Proper justice? They were letting that dragon die in a cell. They don't know the meaning of justice. On the 19th day of their journey, Daehyun made contact with them. He had managed to escape from the prison station and was hiding on a neutral trading post. Through an encrypted communication channel, he told them that he had saved copies of everything he had found in the station's computer systems. I have evidence of their communications, medical records showing Luminex's mistreatment, and files that prove the charges were fabricated, he said. I'll meet you at the council headquarters and bring everything with me. That was the boost they needed. With Daehyun's evidence combined with Luminex's testimony, they would have a strong case. Finally, on the 22nd day, they arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters. It was a massive space station, larger than most cities, where representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to make decisions that affected the entire galaxy. Sunhee's battered cargo ship limped into a docking bay, looking completely out of place among the sleek diplomatic vessels that surrounded it. Security officers were waiting for them, but so were dozens of journalists and camera drones. The entire galaxy was watching. A council official approached as they lowered the loading ramp. Her name was Ambassador Yunji, a human representative who had been following their story closely. Welcome, she said warmly. The council has agreed to hear Luminex's testimony in an emergency session. But I must warn you, the Scathran delegation is also here, and they're demanding that the dragon be arrested immediately. Let them try, Jiwoo said fiercely. We didn't come all this way to hand Luminex over to its torturers. They helped the dragon exit the ship, moving slowly because every step still caused pain. Luminex's twisted back and scarred scales were visible to everyone watching, clear evidence of the mistreatment it had endured. Camera drones captured every moment, broadcasting the images across the galaxy. The council chamber was enormous, with seating for thousands of representatives arranged in circular tiers around a central speaking platform. As they entered, every being in the room turned to look at them. Some showed sympathy, others showed anger. The Scathran delegation sat in one section, their faces dark with fury. Daehyun was already there, sitting in a section reserved for witnesses. He had made it safely, carrying his data files with him. The council speaker, an ancient being from a species that had been traveling the stars for millions of years, called the session to order. We are here to hear testimony regarding allegations of illegal experimentation, wrongful imprisonment, and conspiracy to suppress evidence. The witness may approach the platform. Luminex walked forward slowly, its claws clicking on the polished floor. Despite its injuries and twisted spine, the dragon held its head high. It had waited months for this moment. The dragon's voice, translated through a device that broadcast to the entire chamber, was clear and strong. Luminex described everything: the dying scientist, the data crystal, the evidence of illegal experiments, the false arrest, the torture, and the long months in prison where it was left to die. They took innocent beings from their homes, Luminex said. They experimented on them, combined their DNA with other species, and created suffering beyond imagination. When these experiments failed, they disposed of the bodies in secret. Hundreds died, perhaps thousands, and when I tried to report these crimes, they silenced me. The Scathrin delegation leader stood up, demanding to speak. "These are lies. This dragon is a criminal who stole classified research. It has no proof of these outrageous claims." "I have proof," Daehyun said, standing up in the witness section. He uploaded his files to the council's main display system. Images appeared on massive screens throughout the chamber. Communications between military officers discussing disposal of failed subjects, medical records showing injuries that could only have come from experimentation, financial documents proving that money had been secretly diverted to fund illegal research facilities. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. The Scathrin delegation tried to leave, but security officers blocked the exits. Several council members called for immediate investigations and sanctions. The speaker raised a hand, and slowly silence returned. Based on the evidence presented here today, the council votes to launch a full investigation into these allegations. The Scathrin Empire will cooperate fully or face severe consequences. Arrest warrants are issued for all military officers and government officials connected to these programs. The speaker turned to look directly at Luminex. "As for you, noble dragon, you have this council's deepest apologies. You acted with honor and courage in trying to expose these crimes. Your imprisonment was a grave injustice, and those responsible will be punished." Then the speaker looked at Hyunsu, Jiwoo, Soon-hee, and Dae-hyun. "And you 4 humans who risked everything to save this dragon, you have our gratitude. The charges against you are dismissed. In fact, the council wishes to honor you for your actions." But Hyunsu shook his head. "We don't need honors. We just did what anyone should do when they see an innocent being suffering." The speaker smiled, a gesture that looked strange on their ancient alien face. "Perhaps, but not everyone would do it. That is what makes your actions worthy of recognition." After the session ended, they were surrounded by journalists asking questions and representatives offering congratulations. Luminex was taken to a proper medical facility, where specialists could perform the surgery needed to repair its spine. The dragon would live and in time might even heal completely. Hyunsu, Jiwoo, Sun-hee, and Dae-hyun stood together outside the council chamber, exhausted but satisfied. They had done something impossible. They had challenged a military empire, exposed terrible crimes, and saved an innocent life. "What will you do now?" Yoonji asked them.